In 1929, Leonard Woolley's expedition at extracted from the so-called Priestly Quarter, located 100 meters northeast of the ziggurat, a burial that did not fit any of the 16 categories of funerary practice Woolley had documented over the previous 7 years of excavation. The grave contained 2 bodies, male and female, both supine, arms crossed on the chest, faces turned toward each other. A standard paired burial, dozens of which existed in the necropolis. But 3 details made Woolley describe this one in a separate paragraph in his field diary, something he did for none of the other 1,800 graves. First, the skulls. The male skull had a trepanation hole, clean, circular, approximately 2 centimeters in diameter, on the right parietal bone. The edges showed healing, meaning the individual survived the operation by at least several months. Trepanation in the 3rd millennium BCE is not unique. What was unique was that the female skull had an identical hole. Same diameter, same location, same degree of healing. 2 people who received the same operation at the same time. Second, between the skulls lay a clay cylinder 8 centimeters long, hollow inside, with cuneiform covering its outer surface. Not a tablet, a cylinder. Woolley described it as a ritual object of unknown purpose and shipped it to the British Museum with the rest of the season's finds. Third, the detail Woolley recorded but never published. Beneath the male's right hand lay a second, smaller cylinder, bronze, uninscribed, with a thin, hollow channel running through its center, whose diameter matched the trepanation holes on both skulls. A tool, a surgical instrument, placed in the grave beside 2 people whose skulls had been opened with it. Woolley did not interpret the find. The clay cylinder was catalogued at the British Museum as U.17485 and placed in Near Eastern Department storage. In 2017, curator Sebastian Ray included it in a digitization program. When the cuneiform was finally read in full, the text was neither ritual nor funerary. It was an instruction, a step-by-step procedure describing the transfer of what the text calls Z, breath of life, the Sumerian term for consciousness, from one body to another. And the final line contained a name. Not a god's name, a human name. The priest who performed this procedure last. The text on U.17485 is written in a register that Assyriologists classify as technical procedural, the same register used for medical prescriptions, metallurgical instructions, and brewing recipes. It is not mythological narrative. It is not theological commentary. It is a set of instructions, organized sequentially, with specific materials, specific actions, and specific timing. The procedure has 5 steps. Step 1. Sag ki gub, the establishing of the heads. 2 subjects placed facing each other, foreheads level. If one is taller, the surface beneath the shorter must be raised. Step 2. Ka silim ma, the opening of the gate, trepanation. The text describes the tool, a hollow bronze cylinder with a sharpened edge, rotated by hand against the skull. Location. 2 finger widths above the right ear, where the bone is thinnest. The opening must not go too deep. The membrane beneath the bone must remain intact. The dura mater. A Bronze Age scribe described the meningeal membrane with functional accuracy. Step 3 is called nignam du, preparation of the substance. A compound is prepared from 3 ingredients the text names with terms that do not appear in any known pharmaceutical text. 2 of the 3 terms are partially illegible. The third, kurku, translates approximately as mountain paste or earth paste and may refer to a mineral compound. The substance is heated, and the vapor is channeled through a reed tube into the trepanation opening of the first subject. Step 4 is the transfer itself. Zibara'i, the breath of life goes out. The text describes the first subject entering a state the scribe calls namulu, which translates as the condition of being no longer present, not death. The text distinguishes this explicitly from death, which it calls nam-ush. The person is alive but not present. Their consciousness has exited. Step 5. Zibaraku, the breath of life enters. consciousness entering the second subject through their opening while the compound is administered. The text says the second subject will speak with the voice of the first, will know what the first knew, will remember what the first remembered. The body is new, the person inside it is not. 5 steps, specific tools, specific anatomy, specific pharmacology. Either the most elaborate medical fantasy in Bronze Age literature, or a technical document describing a procedure that someone, at some point, actually performed. And the 2 skulls in the grave at Ur, with matching trepanation holes and the bronze instrument between them, suggest it was not fantasy. The final line of U.17485 contains the name En-Hedu Ki-Gal. The compound breaks down as En, Lord or High Priest, Hedu, ornament or adornment, Ki, earth, and Gal, great. The great adorned priest of the earth. This is not a name found in any king list, any administrative record, any temple roster that has survived. But the construction follows a pattern well attested in Sumerian onomastics. It is structurally identical to the name Enheduanna, the high priestess of Ur appointed by Sargon of Akkad, the first named author in human history. Enheduanna is Enhedu Anna, the great adorned priest of heaven. Enhedu Ki-Gal is her mirror. Where she is of heaven, he is of the earth. Where she served Inanna, the goddess of the sky, the text implies he served a deity or function connected to the underworld, to the space beneath. The text does not call him the inventor of the procedure, it calls him the last to perform it. The Sumerian phrase is Egir Ani Numea, which translates as after him there was none. The procedure existed before him. He was the end of a lineage, not the beginning. And the text provides one additional detail that has generated more private discussion than any other element on the cylinder. It says Enhedu Ki-Gal performed the procedure on himself, not on 2 other subjects, on himself. He transferred his own consciousness from his original body to a new one. The text uses a reflexive construction. Zi ani bara'e sagbishe. His own breath of life went out toward the other head. He lay down beside a second body, administered the compound, and moved. The grave at Ur contained 2 bodies with matching trepanation holes. If one of those bodies was Enhedu Ki-Gal's original, and the other was his destination, then the burial makes a different kind of sense. Not 2 people who received the same surgery. One person, in transit, buried at the moment of transfer. The question that U.17485 does not answer is whether the transfer was completed. The concept of transferable consciousness is treated by modern neuroscience as speculation without empirical foundation. Consciousness is an emergent property of neural activity. It does not exist independently of the brain. This is the consensus. What complicates it is that neuroscience cannot explain how consciousness emerges in the first place. The hard problem, formulated by Chalmers in 1995, remains unsolved. We know which regions activate during conscious experience. Correlation is not causation. Knowing that gamma waves correlate with awareness does not explain why those waves feel like something from the inside. The trepanation detail on U.17485 is not random. The location specified, 2 finger widths above the right ear, at the thinnest point of the skull, corresponds to the area overlying the right temporal parietal junction, the TPJ. The TPJ is the single most consistently implicated brain region in studies of self-location, body ownership, and the sense of being a unified self occupying a specific point in space. Stimulation of the TPJ produces out-of-body experiences. Damage to the TPJ produces autoscopy, the perception of seeing one's own body from an external vantage point. Olaf Blanke's research at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, published in Nature in 2002, demonstrated that direct electrical stimulation of the TPJ in an epilepsy patient produced a reproducible, controllable out-of-body experience. The patient reported leaving her body, floating above the operating table, and perceiving the room from a point near the ceiling. The stimulation was to the exact anatomical region that U.17485 specifies as the opening site. A Sumerian scribe, working 3,000 years before the discovery of the TPJ, specified the one location on the skull where modern neuroscience has demonstrated that the sense of self-location can be disrupted. Either this is coincidence, or the procedure described on U.17485 was developed through empirical testing, trial and error over generations, by practitioners who did not understand the neuroscience but understood the results. The concept of consciousness transfer between bodies, performed by a practitioner using a physical procedure, appears in at least 3 other ancient traditions with no documented contact. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition contains the practice of powa, the transference of consciousness at the moment of death. Advanced practitioners are described as capable of directing their consciousness out of the body through the crown of the skull and into another vessel. The practice is not metaphorical. Tibetan medical texts describe physical signs that confirm successful powa: swelling at the crown of the head, fluid discharge from the fontanelle point, measurable changes in the body's temperature distribution. The point of exit described in powa texts is the sagittal suture, the seam where the parietal bones meet at the top of the skull. This is not the same location as U.17485, but the underlying concept is identical. Consciousness exits the body through a specific point in the skull. The Hindu tradition of Parakaya Pravesha, described in the Yoga Vasishta, involves a practitioner leaving one body and entering another through mastery over prana, the breath of life. The Sanskrit prana and the Sumerian zi refer to the same concept, a vital force that can be separated from the body. The Egyptian coffin texts describe the pharaoh's ba, consciousness and personality, transferring to an imperishable body after death. The transfer requires ritual preparation, specific materials, and trained priests. 3 traditions, 3 continents. The same procedure described with the same structural elements: a trained practitioner, a specific anatomical point, a vital force that is extracted and redirected, and a receiving body that must be prepared in advance. The convergence either reflects universal human fantasy about defeating death, or preserves fragments of a practice that was once known, was performed, and was lost. The 3-ingredient compound described in Step 3 of U.17485 has attracted more speculative analysis than any other element of the text, precisely because 2 of the 3 terms are partially illegible. The one legible term, kurku, mountain paste, has been tentatively identified by 2 independent researchers as a possible reference to a mineral compound containing lithium. Lithium-bearing minerals, spodumene, lepidolite, petalite, are found in the mountainous regions of what is now Iran and Afghanistan, within the known trade networks of 3rd millennium Mesopotamia. The pharmacological relevance is significant. Lithium is the only substance in modern psychiatry demonstrated to fundamentally alter the structure of neural networks, rather than merely modulating neurotransmitters. It promotes neuroplasticity, increases gray matter, and enhances new neural connections. It is prescribed for conditions involving destabilization of the self, bipolar disorder, where identity fragments across states. Lithium stabilizes the self. If you were designing a protocol for consciousness transfer, detaching the self from one substrate and reattaching to another, lithium is the single most logical compound because it directly affects neural self-coherence. The vapor administration route described on U.17485 is also pharmacologically relevant. Inhaled compounds cross the blood-brain barrier faster than oral administration. Vapor delivered directly through a trepanation opening would bypass the blood-brain barrier entirely, delivering the compound directly to cortical tissue. The procedure described is not magic, it is pharmacology, administered through a surgically created access point, using a delivery method that modern neuroscience would recognize as the most efficient possible route to the target tissue. Whether it worked is a question the text does not answer. That it was designed with a coherent pharmacological logic is a question the text answers clearly. U.17485 has been in the British Museum since 1929. For 88 years, it sat in storage as an unread ritual object. Sebastian Rey's digitization program in 2017 produced the first complete photographs. The initial reading was performed by a junior researcher whose name has not been attached to any subsequent publication. The junior researcher's notes were reviewed by a senior curator who recommended that the cylinder be reclassified from ritual object to medical text and transferred to a different storage category. The reclassification was approved in 2018. No publication accompanied it. In 2019, a researcher at the University of Munich requested photographs of U.17485 for a comparative study on Sumerian medical terminology. The request was granted. The researcher included 3 lines from the cylinder in a footnote in a 2021 paper on trepanation practices in ancient Mesopotamia, describing the text as an unusual procedural text related to cranial surgery. The footnote did not mention consciousness transfer. It did not mention the compound. It did not mention Enhedu Kigal. 3 lines from a text that contains the most detailed description of consciousness transfer in any ancient document, reduced to a footnote about trepanation. The full transliteration has not been published. The cylinder remains in storage. The 2 skulls from Woolley's excavation are in the Natural History Museum in London. The bronze instrument is listed in Woolley's field notes but never separately catalogued. No researcher has examined the skulls, the instrument, and the cylinder together. They sit in different museums, in different departments, connected only by a field diary entry Woolley wrote in 1929 and chose not to publish. U.17485 describes a procedure for moving consciousness from one body to another. The procedure specifies tools, anatomy, pharmacology, and sequence with the precision of a medical text. The anatomical location it targets, the area overlying the right temporal parietal junction, is the region that modern neuroscience has identified as the seat of self-location and body ownership, the one area where stimulation produces out-of-body experiences. The compound it describes includes a mineral whose pharmacological properties align with the only known substance that directly affects neural self-coherence. The delivery method, vapor through a cranial opening, represents the most efficient route to cortical tissue. The burial at contained 2 bodies with matching surgical openings, and the instrument used to make them. 3 ancient traditions on 3 continents describe the same procedure with the same elements. And a junior researcher at the British Museum read the full text in 2017, passed the notes to a senior curator, and neither of them has published. The materialist position is that consciousness cannot be transferred because consciousness is not a thing. It is a process, inseparable from the substrate that generates it. This is probably correct, but the Sumerians did not have the materialist position. They had a procedure, they had tools, they had a compound, they had a specific anatomical target that turns out to be the exact region modern science would identify as the most promising candidate for disrupting the boundary between self and body. And they had a priest named Enhedu Kigal, the mirror image of the first author in human history, who the text says performed the procedure on himself and after whom there was none. The cylinder is in London. The skulls are in London. The bronze instrument is in Woolley's notes. The 3-ingredient compound has never been reconstructed. The name Enhedu Kigal appears on no other surviving text. And the question that no one has asked, because asking it requires reading a cylinder that has been in a drawer for 96 years, is not whether the procedure worked, it is why it stopped. After him, there was none. Not because the knowledge was lost, because someone decided it should be.